Earlier this week, I spoke with Congressman Carlos Curbelo. We discussed Cuba, a tax provision you need to know about, but we began with Speaker Paul Ryan's retirement announcement that rocked Capitol Hill this week.
Well, Speaker Ryan really is someone who has worked hard here in Washington, D.C. for a long time, 20 years, and I understand his decision. He's a family man. His kids are getting old, and he has decided to move on, and I certainly support him in that decision. This is an opportunity for Republicans and really for this institution to renew itself, to find new leaders who perhaps might have a different approach. In my view, maybe it's an opportunity to promote bipartisanship a little more and cross-party cooperation so that we can more effectively advance an agenda that can make the American people proud. So it's sad to see someone like Paul go because he is a good man. I've gotten to know him really well. But this is an opportunity for a new generation of leaders to leave their mark on this institution, and that's exciting.
Are there any names up in the air? Who could take the reins?
It's too early to tell, and it looks like we won't have to make that decision anytime soon. The Speaker is staying through the end of the term, and some of the potential candidates have already said that now is not the time for leadership elections, that they want to focus on the rest of the work that remains to be done this Congress. A lot of pending assignments, whether it's infrastructure, immigration, maybe some additional tax legislation, hopefully more gun safety legislation. So there's a lot to do here, and without question, a leadership election would be very distracting at this time.
Are you concerned that this is a step in the Republican Party possibly losing their majority in the House?
Not at all. I think this is a natural process. We know that speakers tend not to have a very long shelf life. It's a difficult job. John Boehner just left a few years ago, and now we will, at the right time, select a new leader. But again, I actually think this is a wonderful opportunity to open the door to a new generation of leaders that have a new, fresher vision for our country. And I look forward to being part of that.
I want to talk about something that's happening a little closer to home, and of course I'm talking about Cuba, because there will be a transfer of power very soon. Now, Raul Castro is stepping down with a hand-picked person that is going to lead the party and the country as well. Do you see this as an opportunity perhaps for change, more change coming out of Cuba?
Well, this is very likely just a cosmetic change. I don't anticipate any fundamental reforms in Cuba, but sure, any time that a dictator is in some way relinquishing power, there could be an opportunity. And not that the Cuban government is looking for any opportunities, but anytime someone who has been in power for a very long time, in this case Raul Castro together with his late brother, the dictator Fidel Castro, he is moving on. A new generation is coming into power. I don't have high hopes for these people. I think that their goal is the same as what's been the Castro's goal for about 60 years now, which is to oppress the Cuban people and to do everything they can to maintain power. But what we do need is for the United States and the rest of the world to stand in solidarity with the Cuban people, and during this important time in Cuba, because without question this is a significant change. Someone with the name of Castro, by the name of Castro, will not be the head of government. The Cuban people need the solidarity of the rest of the world, and the way so many countries are stepping up and saying what's happening in Venezuela is unacceptable, they also have to recognize that what's happening in Cuba is unacceptable, because it is, quite frankly, one in the same. And I'm hopeful, Jackie, that we can get American diplomats back in Cuba as quickly as possible to help those opposition leaders, those courageous dissidents who are doing everything they can to create that change in Cuba. Our American diplomats have for many years been the closest allies and friends, sometimes the only friends that these brave men and women have. So I hope that as soon as possible we can get them back in there to do their important work.
In the hearings in Washington, D.C., Mike Pompeo was asked specifically about Cuba, if he would continue the relationship between the U.S. and Cuba, and if he would like more trade to be going on between both countries. And he said that that's something he would definitely look into.
Well, look, the focus of American foreign policy has to be to support the Cuban people and specifically the dissidents that are standing up and demanding change in that country. Relations with Cuba are only good when they help the Cuban people. If they help to strengthen the dictatorship, to solidify the dictatorship, then they're obviously counterproductive. So what I would ask the administration is to continue promoting a policy in Cuba that advances U.S. interests and obviously that stands in solidarity with the Cuban people.
I want to talk about something that's very close to your heart, and of course it's the Florida Keys. It's unthinkable to believe that already the hurricane season is so quickly approaching, the 2018 hurricane season, after what happened last hurricane season. But there is a specific tax relief option that many people aren't taking advantage of, especially in the Florida Keys. Can you tell us about that?
Jackie, this is very important, and I was a big part of making this happen because I sit on the tax writing committee, and we were able to secure some special tax treatment, not just for the people of Florida Keys, especially for them because they were the hardest hit, but for Floridians all throughout the state who were affected by Hurricane Irma. And obviously this applies to those who were affected by Hurricanes Harvey and Maria as well. But there are some tax provisions, and as tax day approaches, it's very important that people are aware of them. For example, those who made charitable contributions to help victims of the storm, they are without limit, so they can fully deduct those charitable contributions. People who had personal casualty losses that were not reimbursed by insurance, so perhaps if your deductible is too high or if your losses didn't add up to what your deductible is and you didn't file a claim, you can deduct those losses from your taxes whether or not you itemize. So even if you take the standard deduction, you can deduct those losses from your taxes. For small businesses that kept people employed even if they were closed as a result of the storms, there's a wage support, a wage tax credit for each worker up to $2,400. So we really hope that Floridians, especially in South Florida, Miami-Dade and Monroe counties, who really got hit the hardest, take advantage of these provisions. If you have any questions, we have this information available on our webpage, curbelo.house.gov. Contact our office because we don't want anyone leaving any money on the table that they're entitled to.
Before I leave you, I do want to discuss something quickly because there is an investigation going on now in Washington regarding Russians and the potential of Russian involvement in the presidential election. There has been talk that perhaps the president could fire special counsel Mueller, and then also would that be cause for an impeachment? Is this something that you would look into? Is this something that would be a viable cause for impeachment of the president if that were to happen? Obviously, this is completely hypothetical.
Jackie, our institutions in this country are sacred. It's our institutions that keep us free and safe. And my message to the White House is we cannot erode trust and confidence in our institutions. The best thing for everyone involved, from the president and everyone on down, is that the special counsel finishes his investigation, that the conclusion of that investigation is transparent and available for everyone to see, and only then will our country be able to turn the page on this difficult chapter in our politics. If there's any effort to disrupt the investigation, to terminate the investigation prematurely, that will only further erode the trust and confidence in our institutions. And once we start losing our institutions, then we start getting in deep trouble. There are a lot of people in Miami, my family included, that had to come to the United States because the institutions in their countries collapsed. And that's why, for me, the number one priority above any political party, above any political or electoral interests, is to defend our country's institutions, to preserve their integrity, so that our people, the American people, can continue trusting in our government.
And finally, today, because I know that you've been extremely generous with your time today from Washington, I know that you gave up social media, especially Twitter, for Lent. Are you back on?
I just got back on yesterday. I was listening to Speaker Ryan deliver his remarks in private to us about why he was deciding to retire at the end of this Congress. It really touched me when I heard him talk about his family and his children and the way they're growing up and the way he's been a weekend dad for so many years and a Sunday dad in more recent years since he took over the speakership. And I was able to relate to that because it is tough being away from the family, and those of us who serve here are oftentimes required to do that. So I rejoined Twitter for the first time since Ash Wednesday yesterday. And I will just say, Jackie, it's a wonderful tool, social media is, but I think we would all benefit from a little break every once in a while. I had a very peaceful Lenten season, and I just recommend it. Everyone should try it.
I think that's some good advice. Thank you so much. Always great to see you.